The U.S. run out of precision-guided munitions within a week of war with China in a war over Taiwan. INDOPACOM urges for more missiles and bases. Xi Jinping recently made the usual appeal to have a world-class military, which coincides with its consistent progress to be independent of foreign semiconductors and chips. Amid the possible conflict between the U.S. and China's People's Liberation Army, PLA, the Indo-Pacific Command, INDOPACOM, has asked for its most massive funding in the U.S. defense budget this year, over $15 billion. China, whose military technical progress has been observed to be taking place in months, will either choose to attack before the U.S. military fully acquires these capabilities, or will have progressed exponentially by the time these materialize. The broad overall advantage is still skewed in the Chinese favor, and the new U.S. missiles and bases might only increase Chinese losses or make their attack on Taiwan more difficult. But politically, it still has a fundamental misreading of the Chinese intentions on Taiwan, which it still thinks can be deterred. To deter an enemy in warfare, they need to have a goal they are willing to compromise. If the enemy sees their goal as important and necessary, they will not be deterred. INDOPACOM details the budget to be released is $266 million for more Tomahawk land attack missiles, $395 million to develop a long-range version of the system, more missiles for the F-35A used by the U.S. Air Force, over $350 million for anti-ship torpedo submarines, and almost $315 million for new sea mines. This includes $1.6 billion in boosting missile defenses in Guam to counter China's medium-range missiles that can strike the island. The U.S. wants to field the Aegis Ashore system and the U.S. Army's Integrated Air and Missile Defense Program, with nearly $2 billion needed. This includes parking for bombers and fighter jets at Tyndall and Darwin Air Force bases in Australia, developing an airfield at Tinian in the Marianas, a submarine pier, and satellite communications in Guam, more parking for aircraft at Andersen Air Force Base on the island, and more boat ramps and storage on Tinian, the Micronesian island of Yap, and Palau. Another $5.3 billion is required to track missiles, including overhead persistent infrared radar to cover the Arctic, missile warning tracking in low Earth orbit, and more than $1 billion to build a space-based sensor layer. The INDOPACOM's request is on top of the Biden administration's $840 billion defense budget, the most significant spending in U.S. history. The Hawaii-based command wants to build defenses to protect Guam, procure sea-based long-range standoff weapons and anti-ship missiles, construct bases and installations in Australia, Oceania, and the Mariana Islands, and procure new air and missile defense sensors. The INDOPACOM wants billions in munitions and weapons procurement, including advanced air and cyber defenses. This was after a few war games that predicted how the U.S. could run out of long-range precision-guided munitions within a week in a war over Taiwan. The current generation of U.S. strategists misses that greater American and Taiwanese military advancement will not deter, but rather harden Chinese motivations for a military recourse and make the need for an attack on Taiwan even more urgent. All content on Angie Norman is presented for educational purposes. Thumbnails and titles are for illustration only. This is very useful information today. I hope it is useful and becomes knowledge for all of you. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you later.